What's up everyone, welcome back to more Reddit stories about crazy people, Karens, and all that kind of stuff. Hope you're all doing awesome today. Be sure to subscribe for more Reddit content if you haven't already, and let's get into today's stories. Won't move your car? Enjoy the hour wait, and a car accident. The other day, I, 25 male, was delivering fuel to a gas station. The station was set up where the tank access lids are right by the parking spots. For me to be in a position to dump fuel, I need to block all of the parking spots in front of the building. There's usually a car or two in the way, and I can usually wait patiently until I'm clear to pull in. If it's a busy time of day, I put cones up as cars leave to prevent anyone else from pulling in until I've moved into position. But this time, a lady in a Tesla absolutely couldn't handle parking 50 feet away and had to move my cone to park right in front of the door. I hopped out of my truck and went inside to ask her to move so I could deliver the gas, and she told me, "Get Ben, you can wait until I'm done here." So I pulled my truck in behind her with about 2 inches to spare between my truck axles and her bumper. I set my brakes and began hooking up hoses to unload. Since I couldn't park in the ideal position, my large 3-inch hose was too short to reach the hole, so I used my 2-inch hose, which is longer but does limit flow rate by about 33%. No sooner than 5 seconds after I've opened my valve to start the fuel delivery, she comes out screaming that she's in a hurry and I need to move my truck before she calls the cops for harassment. I told her, "Get Ben, you can wait until I'm done here." She asked me how long it would take. I informed her that normally it would be about 45 minutes, but because I had to use my smaller hose, I figured about an hour and 15 minutes. She stormed off and got in her car and called the cops. About 10 minutes later, 2 officers arrive and ask what the problem is. She wants me arrested for harassment. The gas station employee sides with me, saying the woman was rude and belligerent and I'm just here to do my job. The cops tell her she's just going to have to wait, and they leave. I took my sweet time unloading and doing my paperwork. All total, she waited an hour and a half before I moved my truck when I left. As I was waiting to pull out of the parking lot, she zoomed around me and pulled out into the street, directly into the path of oncoming traffic. She was T-boned by a lifted pickup with heavy-duty cattle guard bumper. Her Tesla was totaled. The pickup was completely unscathed. She was not injured, but I almost had an asthma attack from laughing so hard. Guy tried to take my 6-month-old out of my arms. My husband and I were having a garage sale, during which an older white male stops by. I am standing out front with my son in my arms on my left side. My husband is sitting and my dad is kinda in front of my husband, so he can't stand up quickly without risking knocking into my dad. After looking and not buying, the guy comes up to where we were chatting with my dad, sees my son and jokingly asks a creepy question. How much for the baby? That we'd already heard from 3 other people at our garage sale today. Well, of course he's directing this to my son, who upon hearing the word baby smiles, and this guy took it to mean he could try to take him out of my arms. He reaches for my son, who, mind you, doesn't even consistently reach for me or my husband yet, as he's barely 6 months old. So I angle him further away and try to laugh it off while saying something like, "He's not for sale." The dude then reaches again. I shift my baby thoroughly to my left hip and angle my body away from the guy more so he is only getting the right side of my body. My dad realizes what's happening after freezing for a moment and says he likes his mama. And my husband is staring daggers at the guy, but as there are other folks in the garage, he's trying to keep his cool. The guy laughs it off and wanders back to his car while my husband, dad, and I all just ask each other if that really happened. I've had other folks at stores touch his feet without permission before I could maneuver us away, but this was so uncomfortable and far beyond that. My husband was finally able to stand up once my dad moved and immediately grabbed my son, telling him that mama kept him away from the stranger danger, but I still feel like I could have been more forceful. We were all pretty weirded out by it for a while. Even my neighbor who had her own sale going on when I explained it was shocked he was that forward. Karen tried to steal my parking spot, so I made sure she never got another one again. I live in an apartment complex where parking is a hot commodity. We all kind of follow an unspoken rule. If someone's waiting for a spot, you'll let them have it. Simple enough, right? Well, not if you're Karen. One evening, I'm doing the usual post-work parking hunt, and after what feels like an eternity, I finally see someone about to pull out near my building. I've got my blinker on, waiting patiently for the spot. But just as I'm about to pull in, Karen zooms in out of nowhere, grabs the spot, and strolls off without a care. I honk, thinking maybe she didn't see me. She just gives me that classic Karen wave and disappears into the building like she did nothing wrong. Now, I could have confronted her, but we all know how that ends. Karens don't take well to being told they're wrong. So instead, I decided to handle things a little differently. Here's where it gets fun. I have a friend who works for the towing company that our complex uses. After venting to him about my little Karen problem, he tells me something interesting. Karen's car is technically over the line into the fire lane. Not by much, but enough to be a violation. So the next day he swings by, slaps a warning on her car, and of course, Karen being Karen, she ignores it. The car doesn't move, and by the next night it's towed. You'd think that would teach her a lesson, but no, not Karen. A week later she's back, and this time she's taking up 2 spaces like she's trying to stake her claim. I couldn't believe the nerve. So I made another call. And yep, another tow. But this time I decide to leave a little parting gift. A sticky note on her windshield that says, "Parking is a privilege, not a right." Now Karen's been banished to parking on the street. Every time she tries to park in the lot, she somehow ends up accidentally breaking another parking rule. Funny how that works. And ever since, Karen's been very quiet. No more smug waves, no more taking spots. Just Karen being Karen, quietly parking down the street where she belongs. Called the cops because I took a lunch break. I run a barbershop in West Virginia and used to work at the Greenbrier Resort. They still contact me for clients every now and then when the salon staff don't want to do certain men's cuts, to which they pay me way more than I charge. So this morning, I got a call in for some Fallout 76 fans that want to look exactly like the character they play. So on my lunch break, I went over and performed the services they wanted. It was great. They had cosplay and everything. Well, as I was doing the paperwork the hotel requires, I received a call from my town's police station. It was a wellness call because 2 clients from the hills were worried I wasn't at my shop. When I got back, I was greeted by the opposite of wellness. 2 older gentlemen were sitting inside my shop with the police. The police asked why I left my door unlocked. I didn't. The police then said the reason the men called was because the door was unlocked and my register was open. But go figure, I don't use a register, and again, my door was not unlocked. I pointed out that I had a sign on the door that read, "Out to lunch, back before 1." That's when I noticed my door was broken by the notch where the lock sets in the frame. They broke in. So that's when I tell the officer, and after they look, they decide to check the security cameras in the area. Turns out the men didn't pay attention to the turned off barber pole, the sign on the door, the lights off, the locked door, etc. They just decided that the door was stuck a little and proceeded to bust it in. It's an old building. They then called the cops because I wasn't there. This eventually led to them trying to justify the actions they took, but this was done by screaming at the police. In normal police fashion, they threatened to arrest them for breaking and entering, and the men did not take this well. That's when they started to insult me. What if he was her, etc.? Well, I didn't see the sign, etc. That damn door was unlocked, etc. I'm an eccentric person for West Virginia, so obviously it turned into straight up slurs. That fucking blank is lying. If it weren't for lazy blanks like him taking an hour break, this country would, etc. This is now a criminal case, so I can't say much more now. But I can say one is sitting in a cold cell and the other is attempting to hitchhike the 40-minute trip back to the hills. My career would be perfect if it weren't for people like this. I literally worked during my lunch break and didn't eat just because I knew I was going to have a lot of fun. Uncle's wife doesn't like my t-shirt and she faked a breakdown to my response. Growing up, my dad and I loved watching movies, and one of our favorite series was Friday the 13th. My parents were separated and my dad lived in another part of the city. He passed away a few years ago, which put me into a deep depression, and I isolated myself from most people for a couple weeks. My uncle's wife is very religious, and is known for preaching to others about things she doesn't like and why they're bad. There have been several incidents between her and other family members because of this. They kept to themselves, so they weren't always caught up on family news. It took some time after my dad passed for me to get out, but I decided to visit my grandma and my uncle, and his wife happened to be there. I took my sweater off and I was wearing a t-shirt with Jason Voorhees on it. Before I could put my sweater down, my uncle's wife says, "Ew, what is that on your shirt?" So I explained who it is and what movie he's from. She then says, "It's very ugly. I don't know how you could wear that. I would never allow my kids to wear that." And I ignored her and began talking to my grandma. My uncle's wife is scoffing and sighing, and my uncle asked her what her problem was, and she responds directly to me and says, "Your parents let you wear that?" I laughed because 1, I'm a grown man in my 30s, and 2, my parents couldn't care less about what I wore. I told my uncle's wife, "My mom doesn't care what I wear, and you probably haven't heard, but my dad passed away a few weeks ago. I know he wouldn't care if I wore this, so you should stop paying attention to it." She and my uncle froze while my grandma stared at her angrily and told her to be mindful of what she says. Suddenly, my uncle's wife covers her face with her hands and pretends to cry and starts hyperventilating before laying down on the couch. After a few minutes, she sits up looking like she never cried and starts stammering about how I could have told her in private instead of responding in front of my uncle and grandma. She tried being friendly after that, but my uncle decided it was time to leave, and I stayed with my grandma until more family showed up later on. Since then, my uncle's wife doesn't talk to me or acknowledge me, which is perfectly fine with me because I don't have to deal with her preaching anymore. I just witnessed a figurative massacre. Supermarket aisle earlier this evening. A 20-something man carrying a baby in a sling is trying to shop in peace, only to be accosted by an older woman. Making eye contact with him and then me, she loudly proclaims, "I love to see a man doing the babysitting. Are you giving his mom a break?" To which he replies, "I am her mom. I just haven't had a chance to look after myself much with a newborn." Clearly dying inside, the woman splutters, bows backwards, apologizing, and disappears around the corner. He then casually says to me, "I'm her dad, really. I just don't like it when they call it babysitting." It was legendary. The greatest thing I've ever seen in real life. I laughed so hard, especially when I rounded the corner and realized she'd dumped her trolley and run out of the shop. The way she spoke to him might seem friendly in writing, but her tone was condescending. She invited me, another woman, to marvel at the performing animal, a man taking care of a child. Dads of Reddit, next time someone calls taking care of your child babysitting, follow his example. They'll never do it again. Anyway, that's going to be it for today. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. If you enjoyed, be sure to drop a like and hit that subscribe button as well for more Reddit stories. So I'm out of here. Take care, and I'll see you next time.